Hey there, it's great to have you back. My name's John and this is JW Aqua. If you're a regular follower of this channel, you might have been wondering where I've been for the last couple of weeks. Well, as you can hear in my voice, I'm still not properly well. And last week I had lost my voice completely. In that time I was doing loads of thinking about what I'm doing, and you may have gone and watched me setting up Escape specifically for shrimp. Now, that's behind me. But you can go and watch that video, catch up on that. I wanted to talk to you about shrimp and their care, and I started thinking about ways to do that. And actually, I met someone a week into my YouTube journey called Ems from Somerset Shrimp Shack, and we've been chatting loads. It's been really good to have somebody to bounce ideas off and chat to about the hobby. He's doing amazingly over on TikTok and also here on YouTube, so go and check him out, Somerset Shrimp Shack. But we scheduled a call, and you can jump in on that call with us. So let's enjoy that. Hey mate, how you doing?
Hi man, you all right?
Yeah, not too bad at all. I was just saying in the video when we came up to this, like, I bumped into you completely by accident in my first week on YouTube with some of the other guys, and I just wanted to talk to you about shrimp. I could tell these guys all about shrimp, and I would probably give them loads of confusing information, and like you'd probably then like watch it at some point and go, "Oh man, John, what did you say?" So you started off in aquariums with fish, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then moved into shrimp. Tell us a little bit about how, why.
To be honest, like, I actually kept shrimp in the second tank I ever had.
Okay.
I just killed all of them. So I wasn't very successful when I first started out, but that's because I basically knew nothing.
Yeah.
Back then the knowledge was as basic as they're red and they're pretty and I want them in my tank. And I'll come back to that story later actually, but they've always been kind of there, been around. But the main reason for jumping more so over to shrimp recently was kind of just, I kind of fell into it in a weird way. I'd had a break from fish keeping for years and years, and I ended up with a friend saying, "Oh, I got this fish tank and I don't really want it. Do you fancy it?" And I thought, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. Let's start again.
Nice.
Got a little fighting fish, and saw some red cherries in the shop. I thought, oh, yeah, we'll get some red cherries to go with it as well. I know they can be a bit funny together sometimes, so it depends on the better. But got some red cherries. Then fighting fish, as you know, like to die for no reason at all, or do something stupid that leads to their death.
Yeah.
My one lodged itself under a piece of wood that was too small for it to fit through. And I came back from work and found it kaput. So I just had a tank full of shrimp. Went on holiday for a few weeks, came back and there was about 150 shrimp in there. I was like, oh my god, like that's ridiculous. This is like the middle of summer, so it had been quite warm and everything. Didn't know what to do. Thought, oh, you know what, I'll try and sell some of these, see if anybody in the local area wants some. Before you knew it, I had a tank of yellows, and then a tank of blues, and then a tank of greens, and then Shrimp Shack was born and all that stuff, and then we started looking at other types of shrimp. But that's kind of why I transitioned over to it, to be honest. And then I kind of just hyper fixated on shrimp and started learning loads about it, and thought, this is cool to tell other people about too. So that's that's kind of it.
Started with Neos, just for people who are watching this and they've got like no idea like what we're talking about in that way. Neo Caridina shrimp and Caridina shrimp, what's the difference? Most people start with Neos, yeah?
Yes. So they're all from the same family. Now, I could be really technical and I can't remember all of it. I think it's like the order of Decapoda, the family of Etiada, all these different Latin things, but what it boils down to is Caridina and Neocaridina are closely related cousins, but there are some slight differences. But to look at initially, they look the same except for colour and pattern.
Yeah.
Now, Neocaridina and Caridina are both really generalist terms that we use for what are still quite broad families. So
Yeah.
you've got Neocaridina dividi, which is what are sold as cherry shrimp. So that's your red cherry shrimp, your blue dreams, blue diamonds, green jades, etc. They're dividi. There are other Neocaridinas in the hobby, like Zangensis. My knowledge is mainly on dividi, but there are loads of others too.
You're going to send me down a rabbit hole now of like trying to find weird stuff now.
I think there's like 20 different types of Neocaridina. Equally, Caridina, again, really broadened, because when most people say Caridina, they're referring to like your fancy Caridinas, like your boas and your fishbone galaxies, black fancy tigers, crystal reds. But actually, Amano shrimp are Caridina as well.
Yep.
So they're Caridina multidentata. So just to throw another spanner in the works. But the main two that people are focusing on are your more ornamental dwarf shrimp, which are Neocaridina dividi, and then Caridina serrata and cantonensis, which are actually in some variations crossbred to create something else as well. Another rabbit hole.
And I suppose the reason that they're so popular is that they're one of the freshwater shrimps that they spend their whole life in freshwater, isn't it? They're so young growing up in freshwater. A lot of stuff like you mentioned, like Amanos, they've got to have brackish water for their their shrimplets to survive and all that kind of stuff. So then we get into it, so it's freshwater and staying in freshwater. Freshwater then is not the end of the story, is it? And that's kind of where I suppose some of the difference comes in.
Yeah. So when you're talking about Neocaridinas, your cherry shrimp versus your fancy Caridinas, like I said, initially you look at them, there's not really much difference other than colour and pattern. Anatomically, they're very similar as well. The main thing is that they can't crossbreed because their reproductive appendages are slightly different. But other than that, looking at them, almost identical. Their care requirements, on the other hand, that's where the differences start to come in. So your cherry shrimp, pretty much most people can keep them in treated tap water, especially in the UK. You might struggle in some other countries depending on how filtered the water is and everything, but for the most part, in a majority of the United Kingdom, treated tap water is fine. They're pretty hardy and they're very adaptable, but they're not very good at quick changes. So keeping things really stable is what's important. So you don't necessarily have to hit an exact number on the head. So they can tolerate sort of between pHs of 6.5 up to 7.5. That's like a good range for them. You could keep them anywhere in that, but if you were to go from 6.5 to 7.5, they're going to croak, definitely. So there's lots of things to consider when you are looking after them. But if you keep them in a stable environment, they'll live long, happy, healthy lives, give you loads of babies, and they're really fun and interesting to watch. So Caridina, you can't really, we'll circle back to this in a second, you shouldn't really keep them in tap water. Again, this is a really broad thing because you've got some species like Caridina multidentata, you've also got some species like Caridina babolti, which do look really similar to Neos and the fancy Caridinas. They're fine in tap water. So there's always these exceptions, but for your fancier ones like your boas, your crystals, your Taiwan bees and everything, RO water is what you want to use, or RO-DI, and that's referring to the way that the water's filtered. So RO is reverse osmosis, or reverse osmosis deionized. I believe it's a 5-step filtration process. It removes all the heavy metals, all the chemicals, and just all the stuff that you don't want to be in the water. And essentially you're left with water in its purest form, H2O.
Awesome.
The reason we need that is because there's certain minerals that Caridina don't do well with. There's too much of it. Primarily what you're looking to remove is the KH, which is your carbonate hardness. This then opens up a whole new can of worms. And it sounds, anyone who's thinking of Caridina, don't be put off by this because it sounds a lot more complicated than it is. And it's not necessarily like a really hard thing to learn. It's just a really steep learn. And then once you've done it, you've learned it. So you're looking to remove the KH, which is why we use RO water. You're looking to remove the KH because of the way it affects the health of the shrimp, and also it allows the pH to drop lower than you would if the KH was there. So KH essentially buffers the pH of water. Because we've removed everything though from the water, not just the KH, removed everything else as well, you need to remineralize that water.
Yeah.
So you get remineralizing salts and solutions to add something called GH back, which is general hardness, and we need that to help the shrimp in like their molting process and other things like that.
Yeah.
So one that I use particularly is Quoll Drop. Really rate it. But there's loads of them out there. Also though, because we've removed the KH and there's now no buffering capacity to the water, the pH can swing.
Right.
So we then have to introduce active substrate, which is basically your aqua soils, but you can get some more shrimp specific ones.
Yeah.
And what they do, keep your KH down, but they also buffer your water to keep the pH low. And another thing that you can do to aid that is by using things like catappa leaves, Indian almond leaves, and other botanicals.
Yeah.
So it does become this whole sort of, there's several things that have to work hand in hand to achieve the parameters that you need. But once you do that, it's almost the same as keeping cherry shrimp. So it's the initial setup that's harder.
Yeah.
They are more sensitive. They are a lot more sensitive. You do need to keep a bit more of a better testing regime. But when it comes to this point, there's kind of quite a few different methods. So
yeah,
because the minerals don't evaporate with the water, they stay in the water. Essentially, if you've got quite a clean system and you've set it up really well, the method that I use is I literally just top up the tanks with plain RO, and I don't do water changes unless something's wrong. So some tanks I haven't done a water change on in 9 months, and I get breeding healthy colonies out of those. And some people will watch this, they're going to be going, you haven't water changed for 9 months in a Caradina tank. The method I used before, I would do a 10% water change every 2 weeks, and I was finding that my active substrate that buffered the pH was running out of its buffering capacity quicker, and I was having to reset the tank after maybe 6 to 9 months rather than a year.
Okay.
And sometimes, and it could be coincidence, could be the time of year that I was doing it at, but I would have said there was less breeding activity in those tanks that I was changing the water out all the time, because there's less stability, even though it's only a small amount.
Yeah. Okay, so
but yeah, I mean, I kind of went on a big tangent there about Caradina.
No, it makes sense completely, mate. And that's what I need to know so I can kind of do it right. And I was thinking about all those things. Is it like, is it topping up and stuff staying in? I got my head in kind of like, and this is another thing that you've gone into and I haven't yet, marine, and like that idea of salt staying in the water and top up and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I was kind of wondering about that, and I've got the substrate in to buffer and all that stuff. So next thing, and I know kind of again this is different and it has different effects, is temperature. Like there's quite a wide range in temperature, maybe in what we're keeping Caradina in.
So temperature for Neos or temperature for Caradina, or do you want to talk about both?
Go for both, mate, because some people might watch this and go, okay, like I'm hearing this, and okay, Caradina, maybe I'm not quite ready yet, and I want to learn a little bit more about shrimp in general, and then might want to go with Neos, and then I'm going to go with Caradina and bite the bullet, go for it. So
for Neo Caradina, generally on the internet you'll find people saying 18 to 28 degrees is the temperature range. Caradina you'll see 18 to 23. Now, take it with a pinch of salt, because anyone who publishes anything on the internet does not want to be open to massive amounts of criticism if it goes wrong. Yeah. So you'll probably find, as I've found this with a lot of fish, plants, shrimp over the years, those ranges are a little bit bigger, but people bring it in because they don't want to be under scrutiny if anything goes wrong, which I get, which I completely get. Shrimp do better off the lower end of their scale than they do off the higher end. Going too high is bad. Going too low for too long could be bad.
Yeah.
But they do better in environments outside of it, too cold outside the bottom end of their range. So the other thing to consider, and it's like this with a lot of fish as well, is that temperature directly affects metabolism.
Yeah.
So keep your shrimp warmer, they'll breed quicker, they'll grow quicker, they'll die quicker. Keep them cooler, they'll grow slower, they'll breed slower, but you'll get to enjoy them for longer. So most people will probably be keeping their shrimp indoors in some capacity, whether that be in like a converted garage or an office or just a display tank. And I can't really imagine most people's homes go sort of below maybe 16, 17 degrees at night at the coldest.
Yeah.
And your shrimp will be fine at that. They'll be absolutely fine. So you could run them without a heater. Carradina, you definitely don't want to take above 23 degrees if you can help it, because they are just that bit more sensitive. And then there's things to consider as well, like the way that temperature will affect acidity of the water and the CO2 and all of that malarkey, and they're more sensitive to it. So Carradina are definitely more finicky with temperature. Myself, so I keep all of my Neo colonies and my Carradina colonies in the same room, unheated all year round. And that's how I can happily say and prove with what's worked for me that you can keep them outside of those ranges, because through the winter that we just had, which I would have said was particularly cold, it was getting down to about 10 degrees every night in the shrimp room, and all of them are unheated. And then in the daytime it would go up to sort of about 20. I think it's about 28 in there right now because it's in a conservatory. So I'm going to have the issue of everything's going to be too hot in the summer. But the way I look at that is, surely in their wild environment it's going to be cold in the evenings like that. They're not in they're out in the middle of nowhere. They're not in built up areas heavily polluted with loads of warmth from buildings and energy. They're in streams at the base of mountains. It's going to be freezing at night.
I often see that when I look at like temperature ranges and stuff like that, when you go in the shop and you look on the temperature ranges. And I think we can kind of, sometimes when we go in there and we're in a shop situation, we kind of like, we look at that and think about our heaters rather than like what's that set on. And like, you know, there is like, you know, we've got seasons, we've got, like you say, night and day temperature fluctuations, but tying into what you were saying before, because they're such large bodies of water that these animals are in, like the changes go slowly, don't they? That's like the creep rather than a suddenly like bang, we've turned a heater on. But cool. So temperature, that's cool. Then like I suppose then we're talking, and one of the things you mentioned then was like breeding. So if it's warmer, they're breeding more. I suppose that's kind of seasonal as well, isn't it? Like in that way, in the wild. Like if you want to breed shrimp, I think, you know, I can pretty much answer with Neos, as long as you got the conditions okay there. Like try to stop them breeding would be the problem. Like if you were trying to like that's the case. How's that work with Carradina?
To be honest with you, I would say the thing with Carradina is that window that they're comfortable in is smaller than Neos, and getting yourself into that window and then keeping it stable can sometimes maybe be a bit trickier or take a bit longer, and gives maybe like a false sort of image that they're different to breed, because they're exactly the same. Okay. They get saddled in the same way, they mate in the same way, they hold the eggs in the same way, and they release the shrimplets in the same way, and it takes about the same amount of time.
Okay.
Carradina, their window's smaller, the parameters that you keep them in, and getting like a stable read in there can maybe be a little bit trickier, and I think it could probably give off maybe like a false image that Carradinas are trickier to breed or breed a bit differently. But I would say it's probably just because that window is smaller, and it can take maybe a little bit more work to get there sometimes, especially if it's like your first time moving into Carradina. So it gives this idea that they are harder, but they're exactly the same. They get saddled, they hold eggs for the same amount of time, they hold the eggs under their tails in their swimmerettes, and they release the shrimp in the same way. They're more or less pregnant for the same amount of time too. If you were to set a Neo tank up and a Caradina tank up at the same time, and you could guarantee that the shrimp mated at the same time, they would probably have babies at the same time.
Okay.
Maybe there are slight differences, but I myself have never witnessed those differences. I'm not like a PhD in shrimp. What I've seen, what I've learned, and what I've experienced, but they're more or less. You almost, when you've been doing it for a while, you almost forget that this is a Neo, this is a Caradina, until you're doing like your maintenance bits.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then like we've got I see loads of people now go out and they buy loads of Neos and put a load of different colours in and all this kind of stuff, and then it's a recessive gene, isn't it, the colour in Neo Caradina, so you end up back at a wild type. And I've got a tank full of wild type Neos that actually are rescued from the sump of a shop that was closing down, where all the different colours had gone in over the years, and they were there. And I've got these kind of like brown, and you get the occasional darker one or whatever. Things work a little bit differently with Caradina, don't they, in terms of if they're mixed together?
Yeah, so like you're saying, Neo Caradina's colour is recessive. It's been line bred and honed over generations. As soon as you mix one colour with the other, the dominant wild comes back, and quite quickly, in a couple of generations, you start getting these wild types coming back, and it can wipe out all the colour from your colony really quickly. And that's where you get the wild types, and that's what happens when people have skills tanks. Each to their own. It really upsets me seeing all that hard work lost. From a breeding perspective, I don't mix my colours in Neos. There are some... This is another rabbit hole, maybe for another time.
Yeah.
There is some mixing that people have done successfully with Neos to create different variations and overlap shell colours over different flesh colours. Okay. That's a big rabbit hole. Now, cool. Caradinas is really interesting because the way that they hold their characteristics and their genetics, and this is going to be a really basic explanation because even now I'm still learning about it myself. But with the main group of Caradinas that are your fancy Caradinas, you kind of got two sides. You got Serrata, which is your tigers, and then you've got Cantonensis, which is like your crystals.
Yeah.
So crystals over time were bred, and as they were trying to hone certain types, other types were discovered, same as with the cherry shrimp. So the first ones found were crystal blacks, or crystal bees, and they brought those into captivity, started breeding them and honing what we now see today as crystal black. So Hisayasu Suzuki, that's his name. So he was trying to hone crystal black shrimp, and he discovered partway through it that there were some red ones that came out, and he separated these red ones out. I think the first time he saw them, it didn't make it. The second time they came up, he managed to get 3 of them. And for a long time, whilst he honed those, all of the crystal reds, now I don't know if this is true to this day because there may be other breeders that have added their lines in, but at one point, all of the crystal reds could be traced back to those 3 shrimp from that one project, which...
Wow.
Yeah. Which probably owes to the sensitivity of those shrimp as a whole. That was in the 1990s, I believe it was, that project was happening. So it wouldn't surprise me if you'd had other breeders, especially in Asia, because shrimp's massive over there, that had stabilised their own lines and added to that gene pool. Yeah. But going down the crystals, you then had like the golden bees, blue bolts, and then you had what they call Taiwan bees, which are your shadow pandas, your red wine pandas, etc. Somewhere along the way, someone realised that you could mix serrata with cantonensis. Don't know how they came up with it, why they came up with the idea of it, but it happened. If anyone's ever interested in looking right into like some of the master breeders of shrimp, called Vin. Really worth looking at, Vin Shrimp, and I believe he was one of the first people, or the first person, to create fancy tigers, and that was a mixture of the serrata shrimp and the cantonensis, and basically the characteristics and the colour of both sides stay present. It doesn't happen immediately, but over lots of generations, they kept the tiger lines and the coloration from the crystal and the tiger. Initially, you get something called mishlings, which aren't wild type. They're like a strange mix. So where in neocaradinas you lose what you've made, in a way, in caradinas you keep something from both each time as it progresses. And through all of this different crossing back and forth, probably hundreds of different types of caradina shrimp. So one that a lot of people know is shadow pandas. So shadow pandas is a Taiwan bee line that's achieved by crossing two other Taiwan bees, the panda and the blue bolt. And what happens is it keeps the coloration from the blue bolt in the genetics, and the panda then gets a blue hue over the white bands, which is pretty cool. To go into genetics even a little bit more, this is really nitty-gritty now. So they don't all come out looking like that. So if you have a blue bolt and a panda and you bred them, you have the potential for pandas to be born, blue bolts to be born, and shadow pandas to be born. And you can have a mixture of all three in that bunch of eggs.
Wow. Cool. So I think, like, next thing I was saying, like, do you think the majority of people are keeping caradina? Are they keeping them as breeding projects? Like, I see less kind of like aquascape stuff with caradina than I do with neos.
Yeah, because of the active substrate. The active substrate only holds on to its nutrients and its goodness for so long, which means at some point its buffering capacity will run out, and then your pH will slowly start to climb. There are some methods to deal with it, but when you're talking about a big scape tank or like a decent scape, everything's sat on top of that soil, and you're basically going to be tearing down the scape every year. I've been there and I've done it, and it's heartbreaking. I've got a really nice scape right now with my crystal reds in it, and I know it's on a time limit. So I think that's why a lot of people just tend to go with like a nice big ball of moss and maybe a little bit of wood with a epiphyte on it. But you can do it, you can scape it. It's just, it's got a time limit, and you know at some point that's going to be going.
Cool. So on my list is, I'm going to try and come up with a way of doing this. I'm going to do a modular scape. Like, watch this space. All right, I've got some ideas, because I know the other thing is, like, I think most people, if they're going to be breeding, they need to be getting in, and that's the other thing, isn't it? You've got to be able to get to your shrimp and that kind of stuff. So like, I've got some crazy idea with hardscape and magnets and separating, and we'll see what happens. So there we go.
I think the other thing as well is, obviously, caradina a lot of them are much more elegant looking than neocaradina. They've got that sort of whoa to them, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
And you want them to be centerpiece. The scape doesn't matter so much, because you're looking at the shrimp. You don't want to put 10 100-pound shrimp in a tank and you can only see one of them because the rest are hiding in the scape.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I get that, and I think that's the thing for me when I've got it. I've kind of gone, right, okay, we go shrimp, and then I start looking down the tanks, and I get to the caradina, and I'm like, oh, that's what I want. So yeah, I think that's where we go in, and like first of all, this first tank, get everything nailed down, make sure I've learnt this, like you say, this steep learning curve, get that knowledge locked in, and then maybe onto some breeding and having a bit of fun and seeing what we can cross together and all that kind of stuff. And
absolutely,
yeah, sounds fun. And mate, I think, you know, one of the best things, like, I've learnt so much from like watching your channel and your TikTok as well, and your lives that you do on that. I know that's huge, like TikTok megastar. But like tell people about Somerset Shrimp Shack. How can they kind of get involved? They've kind of caught the bug here and they want to get shrimp gear, merch.
It's like, just jump on TikTok, have a chat. That's the best way to get involved. But yeah, like you said, I've got channels across a couple of places. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. And we got our own website as well. I say we, it's just me. I'm a one-man band. But
that's a YouTube thing, that, isn't it? So many people do that, and what we are going to do this week.
But I say we because there's a community behind it as well.
Absolutely.
So and we got a Discord too. So there's loads of ways to get involved, and you can kind of be in or out of it as much as you want. If you want to get involved and buy your own shrimp and learn about them as you go. And then we got our website where we sell what you literally will be watching in a lot of my videos and everything, which is quite cool. Like you said, we got the lives where I'll answer people's questions, help people troubleshoot, and we can just get to know each other, make other friends that are in the shrimp sort of hobby too. And then we've got a Discord for when the lives aren't on, if anyone's got questions, wants to share their wins, share their tanks and everything like that. But yeah, just jump on one of the videos, jump on the TikTok, leave a comment, get involved, say hi. Everyone's super friendly, and we all just love aquariums and fish tanks and shrimp and stuff. And that's another thing I think actually is on the content side of things. If you're thinking, I just prefer fish, I do fish as well. It's just shrimp is my main thing, but I do fish as well.
yeah, some really cool stuff. I know you got some projects coming up as well. But yeah, mate, it has been, as always, lovely chatting to you. I've learned a lot. I'm sure everybody watching's learned a lot, and you know, I think it's like you go and you speak to the people who know and have done it and are living it. So yeah, I'm starting this shrimp journey.
I'm happy for you, mate. I'm glad you're joining me.
I know that was like you said, like straight away, like when we kind of connected stuff with, come on, get shrimp. And I'm like, and I think it was that thing, like, you know, initially going, oh man, I've suddenly got to become like a chemist and like, you know, like some kind of like incredibly knowledgeable. And it is like you say that, yeah, there's a bit to learn, but once you've learned it, you've learned it. And I think like anything in this hobby, in the whole kind of, you know, aquarium hobby, if you do it right and you're consistent and you keep up with your maintenance and that kind of stuff, that, you know, 99% of the time, apart from, like you say, like betters who decide to like go and like do weird stuff, or fish that inexplicably jump out of tanks and stuff, like, you know, all this kind of stuff. But if you do it right, it works out, and it's a beautiful hobby to be part of. So mate, yeah, thank you for joining us. Thanks for coming and hanging out. And I'll catch up with you soon.
See you later.
If you enjoyed that and you got as much out of it as I did, then why don't you like this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you can get notified about all the projects I've got coming up. And I've got some exciting stuff that should be coming quite soon. Also, if you haven't done it yet, head over to M's page, Somerset Shrimp Shack, like his channel, watch his videos, and get involved. Get onto his website at somersetsshrimpshack.uk, where you can pick up all your shrimp supplies, food, shrimp themselves, merch. Ems has got it all nailed down. And then soon we're going to be putting all that into practice, finishing off this tank. And then I have got more shrimp related content coming soon. I'm excited, trying to work through some of those things. How can I build a scape that I can do in a kind of modular way? So when I have to refresh it and make sure I've got all that buffering capability, how can I do that without pulling the whole thing out and having to start completely from scratch? So yeah, if you want to see that kind of stuff, give me a like, check out one of my other videos, check out some of M's videos, and I will see you on the next one.